supposed to transition on its own, but anyway, here we are. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Bold Moves Business Podcast. I am your host, Angela Merzib, and joining me today is a friend and an awesome lady. Her name is Lindsay Brandon. She's the CEO of Permaculture Canada and Armagarden, and a certified permaculture design consultant. She leads a diverse team of 9 designers dedicated to establishing and promoting excellence in permaculture design. Her work encompasses project management for permaculture demonstration sites and pioneering innovative applications of permaculture principles. And her primary focus lies in ecological restoration, aiming to shift the trajectory of industrial agriculture toward permaculture practices. She is passionate about regenerating watersheds and riparian zones. You'll have to tell me more about that and if I said it correctly, with the goal of revolutionizing agricultural practices through regenerative methods that prioritize ecological balance and resilience. Woo, that was a lot.
A lot to accomplish in this world right now.
Right, I see that. That's awesome. So welcome with all
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this will be an interesting conversation. Lindsay and I met ages ago, at least one husband ago for me.
Oh,
Yeah, I was married to somebody else back then, but yeah, Lindsay, we met. She used to be a Zumba instructor. I'm sure you do some of that still. And yeah, we were both doing different things back then. But yeah, I met her at Zumba. She was a lively and fun lady. So we connected, and she actually came and attended my kickboxing class when I was doing that. So we've kind of reconnected over the years and stayed connected, which is awesome. And a few years ago, Lindsay, took a different route, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So yeah, let's just get into it. You're doing permaculture now, as I read there in my intro of you. Can you share your background, your story, and what motivated you to take that leap from what you were doing and to quit all that and to start 2 new businesses?
yeah, absolutely. So I could start basically after high school, right? I went straight into the arts. I'm a creative person. I'm a musician, a dancer, an artist, and all of that. So fortunately, I pursued the arts and I majored in sculpture and did installation work. And back then, I was really around themes of water. Really, lots of installation with water in it or projections of water and things like that. So my love for that has stayed consistent throughout the entire thing. And then I went into the fitness field as well. Once I was a young mother, as a way to be able to both homeschool my children and bring them with me from a very young age, and be able to have a kind of workload that I could manage as I was raising 2 children. And I also knew that, fitness, I was like, I'm not going to do it unless I get paid to do it. As sad as that is, I kind of knew that. So it was like, it was really good because, I really had a strong regimen in fitness throughout my entire, young motherhood, which probably really, lent well to my mental and physical well-being. And of course, COVID shut all that down. So I started, I went back right into the arts right away, teaching music to kids and things like that. And, I started streaming my mantra practice online and all of this sort of thing. So with fitness, I did a lot of different things. I did Zumba and personal training and boxing and lots of yoga because I wanted to understand how to human, right? How to
Right.
how to understand people, right? And how to understand myself on top of the biomechanical aspect of understanding the body, which is something that I was really interested in as well. So,
Mhm.
with the yoga and all of that coming to an end, I thought, if this is the way the world is heading, then I just want a dome in the woods and I'm going to fill it with my instruments and disappear and, where are the farmers at kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did. I called that in and I fell in love with a farmer for a few years there, where we turned, 2 acres of a monoculture 200-acre farm into like a 2-acre permaculture paradise, and really just like started producing vegetables for my community, selling them door to door, just, like a big bag of vegetables just covered with dirt and stuff, being like, here you go, deal with it, figure it out. But connecting people back to their food as
Yeah.
well. So, I got my permaculture certification, which really, that was the starting point in terms of permaculture design, and going into that as kind of a new path from the
Mm,
fitness path where I'd come from. And I feel like it's more of an extension of what I was already doing, because
mhm.
working with people and meeting them where they're at is something that I'm doing often, right? With the people that I
Yeah.
work with, it's really important to be able to understand who is in front of you, what's coming through their words in terms of their values and what they want in the world, and
Mm,
kind of like meeting that with the permaculture design aspects that I'm weaving into their properties. So
mhm.
the background in the arts and the fitness and everything really lends well to the occupation that I'm in now.
Yeah.
Running Permaculture Canada and Armagarden, we have a really broad array of the way that we want to show up in the world. Instead of, being really stringent or stuck into boxes and saying, we do this one thing, or we do this thing, we want to show up in permaculture solutions for all situations, right? Dependent on what's being shown to us. So that's a
Mhm.
little bit about my background. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to go too off tangent soon.
Yeah, no, I think it's good for people to know where you came from because, you know, I think people change careers like 3, 4, 5 times on average in a lifetime. So, you know, just to hear someone else's story about, coming like, what does fitness have to do with permaculture? One would think not a whole lot, right? Other than maybe creativity and some other things. But like, so how did you, it sounds like you were on, a bit of a spiritual path through all of this. How did you find permaculture, or did it find you? What led you from, I mean, I know COVID shut everything down for you, of course, so you had to do something, but how did you find that? What led you
Mhm.
into that specifically?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you point that out, because really it boils down to like wellness, right?
Yeah,
Wellness
true.
and health and living well and enjoying your life every single day, right?
Yeah,
Like it really
yeah.
does. Like honing in on the nutrition and things like that, like I was doing in fitness, the physical well-being of my body led to wanting
Mhm.
to, study the yoga so that I could heal myself from my overuse injuries from teaching 15 fitness classes a week, right? So
Right.
it's like the need for learning the yoga stemmed from a physical need of wellness. And then, through my studies of yoga, that took over, because I just felt really, I wanted to pour myself into that, understanding myself more. How did it jump from the permacultures? Like when I was pregnant with my first child, I was delving into permaculture then. So this is 22
Okay.
years ago. And I was in Calgary, and there was one store that was kind of like ecologically minded at the time. So I was like, well, that's where I'm going to work. If I have to work somewhere when I'm still have a really young baby, it's going to be, with this organization. And I learned a lot about permaculture then, about, low or no VOC building products, and,
Mm.
like the clothing that we wear, and like all these elements of our being. But it really wasn't all that popular, and I don't think I
No.
really grasped how deep the subject was. So
Mm.
when I went into permaculture for my certification, I realized like there's so many elements to permaculture that lend to the knowledge base of what you're doing in terms of holistic design. Um, that this is like an ecosystem
Mhm.
of subjects, and it's not something that I want to do alone, which I thought was really interesting too, because I feel like permaculture comes with all these ethics and principles that are ultimately ways to live by as a human. So it's a lifestyle thing, right? The
Mhm.
yoga was kind of teaching me that. And then permaculture was adding another layer of a similar sort of thing. Like, this isn't just your occupation, this is a
Right.
lifestyle. So with yoga, it's the yamas and niyamas and things like this, which are, observances and abstinences for the yogi. Whereas the permaculture has, the ethics and the principles, and there's all these different things that kind of, like, one of them is stack functions, right? Like, so
Mm,
things that we can apply to how we live our life. So I can
mhm,
see a common thread with that as well. And yeah, the health and wellness field is what's bringing it all back in, because what I'm wanting to do with permaculture is, like you said, it's that the spirit element, right? I want to connect people back to the earth,
yeah.
thereby connecting them back to themselves, right? And it's that health and wellness, and that only comes with holistic design of who you are, and attending to all those elements of your being. Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I would say 2 generations, we've largely lost all that connection to the earth and homesteading and being, autonomous in our food supply and things like this. But I see it coming back around, probably because of recent events, right? I see an interest in that resurging. I don't know if you probably see it too, of course, being closer in that field than I am. Um, but yeah, talk to me about, you talked about the principles of permaculture design and the ethics and things like that. What are some of those? Like, what, maybe for people listening who've never heard of permaculture, like I hadn't before I realized what you were now doing. Talk to them about what is how do you define permaculture? And then let's discuss some of these overarching principles and philosophies that you hold to in what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So permaculture was coined by Bill Mollison and a student of his as well. In 1978, they wrote the textbook, and that's the year I was born, and I think that's pretty awesome. But David Holmgren was his student, and he actually, Bill Mollison, put it into text, but it was the joint efforts of these two gentlemen. And it covers basically, like, there's a whole bunch of different subjects like climate and geography, flora, fauna, fungi, structures, access, water, all these things. And I won't name everything because that's like
Right,
a topic on itself.
right.
So that you're observing all of these elements within design systems that work with nature instead of against nature.
Mm,
So I think about it as permanent agriculture is kind of a
okay.
nice way to break that down. The ethics is earth care,
Mm,
people care, and fair
mhm.
share or equal,
I
right?
like that.
Equality. Reciprocity is something that I'm really navigating personally with this sort of concept and principle, where it's a movement. It's
Mm,
an energy, it's a give and take energy. So it's a cohesive relationship in my mind, and these are my own additions onto the thing.
that's
Um,
fine.
some of the things that we're looking at, like, we're reading the landscape when I go into somebody's property, right? I'm standing in the landscape. I always do an assessment of the land before I get there so I can kind of understand from an aerial view, utilizing, online mapping softwares and things like that, where it
Yeah.
tells me about the topography so I can look at kind of how the water might be moving through the land and things like that. But when I get there, I'm able
Mm,
to observe these sorts of things and understand, okay, well, where's the water coming from? Where is it going? How can I, capture and store as much of that water in the land through this landscape? Right? Where's the wildlife coming through? How does the wind move? Right? So
mhm.
we're working with the earth systems when we're creating design. And then we work with zones. So, like, the zone 0 being my body, in my home and things like that. Zone 1 being just surrounding the home, zone 2 a little further, zone 3 a little further, and so on. But we're placing design elements in specific zones for maximum efficiency. So one thing we look at is, like, work is kind of a failure in design. So we want to
Yeah.
create efficient systems that start to, maximize your use of time. Other things that we're doing, like there's quite a lot, like stacking functions, right? We always try to create these relationships between things.
Mm,
So we're looking at, where am I going to place that and why am I placing it there? Like maybe I have a compost pile that has some excess heat coming out of it. Where can I dump that? And put it maybe into the chicken coop or something like that.
mm,
So we're looking to be almost like a spider weaving these web of relationships. And this is kind of an overarching thing that I'm doing also with Permaculture Canada is weaving relationships between people and organizations and all
mm,
these different elements. Um, yeah, I can go on and on about these, about
no,
how many different things that we're looking at, right? The water is utmost importance, of course. It really dictates a lot of our design.
yeah.
Where's the water coming from? How am I going to water my animals and my plants? How
Mm,
do I access my property? What do I do in case of fire? How am
mm,
I going to move around the property? Fencing.
mhm.
Do I need to protect my gardens, my annual gardens with fencing from wildlife? Or am I going to plant so much that I'm going to share with the wildlife and be grateful for the poop that they're leaving behind because it's free fertilizer, right?
Right.
So we're looking at things in a very different way than common agricultural practices, but it
Yeah, I
makes
see that.
sense. And it's not new. Like, I feel like this is a lot of adopted
Yeah,
knowledge from,
yeah,
First Nations people and Indigenous
yeah,
people as well, where, we have a lot to learn from our ancestors. And really, I'd like to instill a lot more of that and reawaken and re-honor all this knowledge,
yeah.
while we still have it here in the people that are alive today.
Definitely, definitely,
Mhm.
and I love the intentionality behind everything you're doing. It's almost like, as you describe it, it kinda sounds like feng shui for the outdoors, a bit of
Yeah.
that, right? Designing it very intentional, and yeah, all that old knowledge is coming back as new knowledge now, which I love. I'm reconnecting with more of that myself, natural living and whatnot, so this stuff is really fascinating to me. Um, who would you say is getting involved in permaculture and this whole movement? Is it like, um, who is doing this? Is it for people with acreages? Can you do this, in the city? Who is this for?
Yeah, anybody and everybody, right? Like we can even do small scale windowsill design for your apartment in New
Mhm.
York, right? So it's
Okay.
anywhere from that tiny little, like just a small piece of life and a small piece of food resilience for yourselves, like sprouting or mushrooms, right? Can be done in a very small
Right.
space and indoors, all the way up to like huge village projects, right? And on another part of the world,
Very cool.
utilizing different practices dependent on what sort of, vegetation there is and animals and all of that. So, of course, the climate dictates a lot of the conditions that we're working with. One
Yep.
thing that you mentioned about that cohesive relationship thing is, observe and interact is another one of those principles that we're doing. So it's like, when it's not necessarily like we know what the answer is right off the bat. Sometimes we're wrong, right? Sometimes you put something somewhere and, a natural event occurs and things change, right? Trees fall over and now, things have changed. So that's why it's like alive. It's
Mm,
always changing. There's always this fluidity about it, and we have to modify and adjust what we're doing based on the feedback that we're receiving from the earth itself, right? So it's not necessarily like you do this. It's like, what are we doing together? What do I want
mhm.
to instill in my land, and what is the land lending well to receive and want to, proliferate? And it's a meeting of the minds in that way. So that's that reciprocity, that equal energy that I'm talking about that I think is very valuable. Yeah. And all sorts of people are doing this, right? Like
Yeah,
I think it's more popular in Canada to talk about it as
mm,
regenerative ag, right? Regenerative agriculture is more the terminology I think that's familiar in terms
okay.
of broadacre farming in Canada, even in the US. That sort of title is, I think, a little less confusing and daunting for people when they hear permaculture.
Mhm.
It's just like, what is that?
Yeah, yeah.
But I like to operate in both realms and then add on that holistic systems design because again, I'm looking at the person that I'm talking to. And because I've worked with humans, and I've done it with the personal training aspect of really,
Yeah.
becoming people's like psychologist at points. Sometimes, you
Love
end
it.
up in
Yeah.
that position where you get into these really personal experiences with people. And why have that separation when I'm working with the people that I'm working with? Like we're really meeting each other on a personal level and getting to
Mm,
know each other. Right. So like you want to be able to understand their level of commitment to the system that you're
mm,
designing, and also like be able to pull upon the demographic that you want to work with in this way. So I'm
mm,
actually looking to work with people that want to live this lifestyle, see the importance in connecting back to the land, and maybe they already have that, or that is there for them, right? I'm really interested in working with that demographic of people because it's not a set it forget it system. Like some
no.
there is
Yeah.
there is this sort of like misconception that permaculture is, oh, put your trees in the ground, they're going to take care of themselves because we designed it that good, right? But it's not really like that. Like it takes a few years to establish, say, a food forest or whatnot. If you're planting a whole bunch of trees, you've got to water them in the first few years, and you've got
Yeah.
to plan an efficient method to do that, right? So we're
Mm,
doing things very differently in terms of like how can we minimize the energy expenditure and cost and waste and things
yeah.
like that. It's all in there. Hmm.
Yeah, you'd have to think about all that. What's the main motivation for most of the people you work with to do this? Is it like food security? Is it always about creating a food garden, or is it sometimes just having trees and like connecting with the land, or what's the main driver behind most of your clients
Hmm.
to do this?
Yeah, I think when I started, almost 3 years ago, it was more food security,
Food.
but it was
Yeah.
because of this external event that was going on outside of us, right? There were people finally actually looked and saw, hey, like we have really fragile food systems.
Yes,
Maybe,
I learned that too. Yeah, definitely didn't think about that before this, so,
right?
yeah.
And that's another permaculture principle is the problem is the solution, right? So
Mm,
the
hmm,
problem was, people saw this, but the solution is okay, well, we start to learn again, relearn, how to grow food and
mhm,
re-understand the importance and value of that. And a lot of people still don't, and that's fine. It's got to be everything on the line. But so first
mhm,
it was the food system, but over time, I've seen it turn more into the community element and the people part of it, and like
okay.
things that you can't necessarily quantify or measure, which is very interesting. It does
Mm,
put me into the spiritual
mm,
realm again, where I'm working with things that are not necessarily like tangible in dollars,
right,
right?
yeah,
And this is kind of like a new world business design also because I'm working with people based on, who they are, how they show up, and that sort of thing. And yeah, these things you can't quantify. So it's really
mm,
interesting how I'm not really sure. Like you can't put it in a box anymore, right? It's like here before people were like, yes, I want food, I want permaculture, give me a food forest. But
okay,
now the asks that I'm receiving from people are much broader in scope,
okay,
and yeah, maybe they're elemental. Maybe they just want just their water systems designed, right? Or maybe
mm,
they just want to work on their soil remediation, right? So it's yeah, it's changing all the time.
yeah, just like the earth.
Yeah, right?
Right? No, I do feel that spiritual shift as well in the last few years, so it's interesting you say that. Do most of your clients wanna you talked about community, is it that they kind of wanna be part of something? They wanna meet other like-minded individuals, or what aspect of community does this bring about for them?
Yeah, all of the above, right? And it's
Yeah,
it's situational.
yeah.
That's another permaculture thing. It depends, right? Like that's kind of like people ask us questions and it really does. Every answer is dependent on, well, you can't just ask me a random question. Oh, will this survive here? It's like, well, I don't know, like what's in your soil? Has it been sprayed? Do you have water? What temperature do you reach? Right. So there's all these different things.
Right.
So, and I love that. I love that it's not this cookie cutter
Yeah.
thing. It's a whole new way of operating in the world to be fluid, right? That
Mm.
was always something I was really trying to instill in my yoga students, by never teaching the same thing and always showing up differently and being like, I'm not the Tim Hortons yoga teacher, right? It's not going to be the same every time. And I
Yeah.
want you to be flexible in your mind and your body, right? So
Yeah.
it's more of that
That's life.
permaculture.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's life anyway. You've got to roll with it. And as life taught you back in 2020, 2021, whenever they shut everything down, if you didn't have that mindset already of being flexible and rolling with the punches, so to speak, you'd probably have faltered and done something not so great.
Right?
You had to be fluid, and there you go. You found yourself in this great new field and, onto a new journey, a new path, because of that mindset. So it's
Yeah, and
interesting.
that's that rigidity, right, is what causes all the stress in our body, whether it be the expectation of something that's in front of you,
Yeah,
right? Or
totally.
like I'm stuck on this career. I had already done 12 years in fitness, so I knew I was ready for a change. So
Right.
how long can you be that physical for, right? So
But this kind of brought it on suddenly. You hadn't made plans for it. When something comes on so suddenly, it's really hard to calculate your next move right
yeah.
away when it's kind of hitting you in the face like that. So,
Yeah, and that's really where, I tap into things like synchronicity, which I really,
mm,
that's a spiritual realm that I also love to delve into, is witnessing synchronicities in life and tapping into my own intuition and making decisions based on my own stuff, right? Like how it's feeling in my body and that sort of thing, and really trusting that. And I
yeah,
think, all of this BS that came out of that grand explosion is actually quite wonderful. Most people that I know took a massive pivot and they're better off for it.
yeah,
Everybody had to take a real good look at themselves and who they were hanging out with and reassess. And now we're all
100%.
questioning our belief systems. Like, it's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. It's a result of whatever thing is going on over there, and that's fine. We just focus on our sphere of influence, which is right here, right? Like that's where we start.
Definitely agree with that. And yeah, there was a lot of we wouldn't have chosen this path probably, but like you, I know several people who, great things came from it. It's kind of like that analogy of the diamond being pressurized, the rock or whatever, coal, I guess it is, that's being pressurized, right? I don't know much about diamonds, but you know that analogy. I'm not a diamonds kind of gal. I'm a little more down to earth than that. But a lump of coal, that's me. But yeah, it's that whole analogy of the lump of coal being put under pressure to create something beautiful. But I'm with you there. It was a time of great reflection and a lot of changes, but needed. Like I've changed a lot and I've grown a lot, and I wouldn't want to be the old me. I like this. So, but I wouldn't have chosen that that way to get here, right?
Totally, right? But, and that's what it boils down to, is like in neurology, right? Like we have to be angry or we have to be frustrated to create a new neurological pathway in the brain, right?
Yeah.
So in order for us to change, we need to approach these things with less judgment and not see them as a bad thing. It's like, when you get upset and frustrated, it's like you could actually get excited because something new is coming, right? You're going to have a new way of looking at things. Most people, it's kind of hard to get outside of our emotions and ourselves to do that. But that's kind of like your warning system. I mean, you're angry, something's about to change. Right? You've had enough of that and you're going to come up with a new solution.
Yeah, we have to tap into our creativity. I think we lose that as we get older. Um, our creativity, right? And understanding that life is cyclical. You're going to have hot peaks and valleys, and they're not all going to last. I think in the West, especially, we're just kind of conditioned to be like avoidant of all pain and suffering and pop a pill for that. And, but that's not life. It's cyclical, it's up and down, and that's just the way it is. And you're not going to be anywhere permanently. So you've just got to relax and ride it out and make creative choices to get to the next thing.
Totally. And these are the things that I'm observing, right? Like it's the oscillations of life, right? We learn about that, while when I was doing mindset training and talks on that sort of thing. It was really navigating that and again, jumping out of judgment. But now when I'm studying mycology and microbiology in the soil, and there's so much, really exciting cutting edge information coming out of the mycological world as far as the solutions go with managing the glyphosate and all the pollution and things like that, and creating more rain and stuff. The super exciting, and again, these are patterns in nature that we witness in ourselves, and it's the same, right? The way that the hyphae grows is the same way that, the arteries and the veins in the body branch out, the same shape of the lightning, the redness in our eyes, like it's all the same thing. And I really love how the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm. So I'm looking to nature to understand myself more.
Interesting. That synchronicity again. Yeah. Like you say.
Yeah.
Well, let's move back into, I love this conversation, but let's move back a bit into, I just want to give people a taste of like what you were going through when you faced this challenge. You were working for whoever you were working for, a bunch of different places, right? But you weren't really self-employed, but you went from that to being self-employed. And having a team, like and 2 companies. So what are some of the challenges you faced when you transitioned into doing that, into being your own boss? And how did you handle all that? Was it, like you say, mindset? Um, what was that transition like? Tell us about some of the challenges you had and how you overcame them.
Yeah. Well, it's really a leap of faith, right? And really
Yeah.
just feeling again, like tapping into, life is short and you can't be out there trading your life for dollars, or you can, but I felt the effects of not working in a way that was aligned with what I wanted to see in the world. And I also saw more potential in the occupation that I was in than I was able to navigate. And I wanted to blow open that, how can I show up with solutions in the world offering? And so I strung out on my own, and I was actually surprised that others wanted to join. I really hadn't planned on going from leading one team to leading another team. I was just like,
Right.
I'm just stepping out and I'm going to open up. And then, there was so much outpouring support, not only from designers that wanted to join the mission, but from so many people in my life. And it continues to happen, right? From person to person to person, uh, you know, sending connections my way, and I'm doing the same, right? I'm out there trying to make connections for people, and they're making connections for me. And it's just kind of this fluid moving organism, right? So it's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And I do oscillate, right? And you see it, and then you don't see it, and you see it, and you don't see it.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, am I crazy for doing this? And then it's like, well, no, then I get shown 3 things in a day where it's like, whoa, there's overwhelming support, right? So
Right.
it's really just, it is a navigation for the person, and how much can you trust in yourself and your vision and all of that, and how much are you willing to pass that all away for something else that might not be so fulfilling. Right. So it does, I think the biggest challenge for me is the amount of personal investment that I'm pouring into believing in my vision. That's the biggest challenge, right? Being a mother of 2 kids, quitting all my jobs, going out on a leap of faith, right? Like that's the scary part. But
Yeah.
really it boiled down to, well, when I'm working in a way that's not supporting what I believe in, that's physically detrimental to my well-being, right? That's
Yeah.
me waking up at night not feeling good about things, right? That's every day of my life. So I think it's more important than we realize that we don't settle. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe we learn to live with a little bit less, right? Just to be able to be fully ourselves or do something we feel fully aligned with, right? And I guess
Yeah.
one thing I did notice just as of late, I was like, I became a monoculture, right? Like I was so diverse, right? Before the whole, when I was
Yeah.
doing fitness, like I've
Sure.
been an entrepreneurial my whole life. So I've done, I have 11 different startups I've done.
You know.
I've had a lot of different businesses and a lot of different things that I've done, like soap making and wine and making hats and just lots of different things when the kids were younger too.
Yeah.
Um, but where was I going with that? Like,
You became
oh,
a mono.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I had all this diverse array of income, right?
Yeah.
I had like 20 different contracts all the time, different
Yeah.
things, dancing, singing, fitness, whatever. I always had all these elements of my being functioning. And some storylines were running longer than others and taking longer to achieve and seasonal and things like that. But then with permaculture, I narrowed in so quickly and
Mm.
escalated and got pretty successful very quickly. So I went from being a designer to managing a team to project managing things to executive management, head of design sort of thing. So it just happened so fast that all the rest of the things just kind of quieted down.
Right.
And then I found myself in this position where I was like, oh, I'm less resilient. Right. So I'm re-diversifying again. Just like a
Mhm.
guild, like a guild is when you plant a tree with support species of plants around it
Mhm.
that have
Mhm.
different functions, like bringing in the bees or warding
Right.
off the deer or putting nitrogen in the soil, these sorts of things. So again, a macrocosm, a microcosm of this concept is if I'm just doing this one thing, I'm less resilient. And wasn't that the truth, right? So now I'm finding got to waken up all those different parts of me again and make sure that I'm still pouring energy into all these places because there's that reciprocity from those relationships.
Yeah, it sounds like you had to step out in faith, but get planted, like to use the analogies, get planted and rooted in something first, and then the rest just came in kind of organically if we're making analogies here.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what happened, and you followed your instinct, intuition. I think a lot of us fail to do that. I know I didn't fail to do that when I first started my business. I did not follow my intuition, and it was always right, and I paid the price for it. But yeah, stepping out in faith, that's the hardest part. But if you keep an open mind like you have and just being open to opportunities, I think brings that's that energy. And like years 2, 3, 4 years ago, if you would have talked to me about energy and vibration, I would have been like, you're out to lunch, whatever. But I feel that more now. I see that more now. Um, just because of everything that's been going on. But yeah, I think having that mindset of being open and, no wonder those other folks followed you because they kind of saw something, they felt something in you about your passion for this and your passion to, um, be of service and make a difference and also connect to people and the earth and all these things. So it becomes contagious when we even if we don't say anything, just the way we are, just our presence, I think speaks a lot and we don't even realize it
Hmm.
mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Let's talk quickly about you talked about this how to human, and this is your philosophy that you've carried forward from your fitness journey. Can you
Mhm.
talk to us about that and how it connects to the work you're doing now in permaculture?
Yeah, so I've been encouraged to write a book, so I've started to do
Oh,
that. Life by
cool.
design, right? Because that's really what this ultimately all is boiling down to. It's like designing my life to being a life that I want to live, and not like this thing over there, right? Like, oh, someday I'm going to live like that, right? I feel
Yes.
like people are often working towards a dream, but the dream is passing by in the meantime. So every single day is an opportunity to choose how you want to show up and what you want to do with that day. So I'm very intentional with that as
Mhm.
well. Every morning I light my candle, I do my smudge, I center in, I feel into, what the day is going to hold. And this is kind of a little off topic too, but like the whole manifesting thing, right? We used to do vision boards and things like that. And it's like, go over there and like see the thing and get the details, feel the feeling, make it happen. And this is kind of stuff that I've been working with since I was 18 years old, and it works, right? Like I definitely did a lot of things like dance in a white dress in Havana and like very specific visions that I made
Mhm.
come to be a reality in my life with this way. But
Mhm.
we're in a time now, I feel, and this is definitely getting into the ethereal, energetic, spiritual realm where we don't even have to focus so much on our efforts anymore. It's just the thought. I feel like things are happening much quicker
Yes.
now.
Yes, I do
Um,
too.
yeah, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
everything's just happening so much quicker. So this how to human, how I operate my weeks, how I do my work day, all of this is very intentionally designed so that I know, I only have this much time where I'm going to allow myself to sit in front of a box with, the rays and all the stuff. And,
Yes,
and then I'm
absolutely.
going to make sure that I, eat, some good food, and I'm going to have, my fermented greens in the morning, and I'm going to go outside, and, and I'm getting to these aspects of my human every day, and play my piano in the evening, maybe do some yoga lying on the floor before bed, that sort of thing. And without completely like sticking to a regimen where I'm like, oh, I didn't do that, I feel bad about
Right,
myself. It's not like that,
right.
right? And so
Yeah.
I'm also giving myself more grace when I need it.
Mhm.
For women in our lunar cycle, I'm not going to go work out and pump iron at the gym those days.
Right.
Maybe I'll just go for a nice walk, right? So like honoring these cycles of myself and how they weave into my business, and not separating it. Like that's, I guess, a really big thing about this kind of like new world energy or new world design, new business design is getting away from us and them and duality and creating more cohesion sort of thing, not
Yeah.
competition, collaboration, like all these new world business concepts I love. We don't know how they're going to play out in practice. It's also new, but it's presenting a great opportunity for us to live more fully every day.
Yep,
Mhm.
I feel it too, the intentionality and, all you have is present moment, so why are we always so concerned about like, we're fearful, we live in fear of everything, fear of the future, fear of the uncertain, but it takes a toll on everything, spiritually, mentally, health, physically, um, so I feel you, and I'm with you, and yeah, it's interesting to understand to see where this will take us in the future. I see it happening a lot in the business world too, where we're just a lot more, like you say, gracious with one another and collaborative, and I love that aspect. So who knows where it will lead, but I hope we all embrace it and we move forward in a positive way with it. Um, Yeah. So as we're closing out here, we're kind of getting close to time for our episode today, but I would love to hear about, is there any one specific project that really stands out as a special project that you worked on that you want to share with us?
Ooh.
I surprised you with that one, but
Yes. And this is all in conversation at this point, that I,
Okay.
starting to spark the ideas and talk to people about quantification of the forests, and knowing that with the diversity of species, the forest holds more value. We haven't even identified, the all the mycology, all the species of everything, right? We don't have the data. That's a common problem amongst like even
Mhm.
large scale organizations, is the data is out of date and things like that. So it's like, this is something that I'm really excited about, is to think about, once we can quantify it, because it's the bridge between the old world and the new world that needs to occur. So looking at that very deeply and being like, okay, well, what are the native species here that hold value, right? Like, how can we communicate between this quantifiable, money hungry, capitalistic way into what we're stepping into now, right? Which is undefined and unknown, and, where it's going, right? But we know, it's like we inherently feel there's more people maybe focused on that, given the choice, right? There's this inherent knowing. We know the forests are more valuable the way they are, instead of going and planting these monoculture trees and then spraying them from the air with poisons. Like, it's ridiculous, right? And I think that this is like, people are starting to actually look at this. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited at the potential of these sorts of projects taking hold, where we can start to quantify, and not necessarily in just a conservation way, but in a way where we start to learn, like I said, from indigenous people, about the uses of these plants and the
Mm,
medicine that we have on our doorsteps, right? So, like,
totally.
that's a whole other piece of our
Mm,
well-being. How to human is like, how to take actual plant medicine that actually
mhm.
heals us, and then the concentric ripples of healing for the world, for the people, and everything that would come out of that.
Mhm. That's so
Mm.
lovely. Yeah, I've been working on my own knowledge base about these, plants that are native to us here and how to use them. I've got a whole book about all that and just learning about different things. I went and picked some stinging nettle this summer, um, from a guy's farm that I know who doesn't spray, right? And so, just learn. It's so fascinating to me, and interesting that it's kind of like nature provides so much for us, but we've forgotten it and we've lost all that. So I love relearning about all that and using it in my life, like rendering down tallow and making face cream. Like I'm all about that stuff, right? So yeah, I would love to just do all that all day long, but have other things to do too, but learning as I go here. So that sounds so lovely. Where can people find you and support you and work with you?
Yeah, permaculturecanada.world is my website, or armagarden.world as well. Those both companies they lead to the same website. So again, not
Okay.
separate, but one. Two things inside of one. We have an affiliate program for people if they're interested in like selling the designs and the consultations that we do. Want to get involved with the company. So it's kind of a way to weave into our organization, get some sales training if that's something that they desire, learn more about permaculture, as well as, be a community leader to start to bring these practices into your communities. So people
Yeah.
are free to join that. I have a YouTube channel where I'm posting a lot of my videos as well. So Permaculture
Okay.
Canada on YouTube is a good place to, I do a lot of site tours and visits just to show how people are doing things. It's like, you can do it this way or
Mhm.
this way, and any way in between. So I have quite the backlog of tours that I've done over the summer that I'm uploading to there. I also have it on my Rumble channel at Regen Life, in case YouTube decides to take me down at some point,
Right?
then I can go over there. And so Rumble is also a nice alternative I have a Telegram chat as well. So on Telegram, it's Permaculture Canada. We have a few different subjects there, but that's where people can kind of just come be part of
Yeah.
the community and, ask questions if they want, or if you're looking
Yeah.
for things, that sort of thing. And yeah,
Great.
all the socials, right? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, either armagarden.world or Permaculture Canada.
Wow, you've got them all covered, and I'll
I
put
do.
them I'll put them all in the show notes as well, so you don't have to memorize all these or write down these notes frantically, so oh, well, thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for an inspiring and enlightening conversation, as always, of course. I loved it. So yeah, so everybody, thanks for checking this out. If you want to find out more about me, you can check me out at beboldbranding.com. And if you go there, I do have a freebie for you if you would like to download it. It's called Turn Clicks into Clients. And it's my 10-part framework that I use with my clients to get their homepage firing on all cylinders. So check it out and download it if you wish. And we will see you